Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Round, and today we're playing as Samson. First of all, our item contains the Taurus item, which is one of the 12 Zodiac items, and I don't really like the Taurus item early on. What it does, for maybe of those of you who are unaware, is it reduces your speed permanently, and when you enter a room with enemies, it starts gradually speeding you up. At some point when you hit a certain threshold, you turn into a invincible Taurus, I guess, that deals contact damage, much like something like the Pac-Man item or the Unicorn item that makes invincible and deal contact damage every few seconds or so. And this is exactly what it does, but I don't feel like it's a very good pickup early on, because I like it when you have enough speed and maybe you can afford, maybe your run is a bit weaker, and then you can rely on that effect to actually get your true rooms that you otherwise wouldn't be able to kill. But in this situation, I still feel it's a bit too early for us to pick it up and rely on that, just because we would be too slow, and being too slow of course means that we have a harder time dodging, and B, it also makes it harder for us to explore the rooms, and because exploration bonus is so important in dailies, I feel being slow adds up over time, which means that you will visit less rooms on average, and that means that you'll have less score, and that's not something you want to do. I guess I would pick it up if I had some combinations that may be fast, or maybe if I had some way of dealing orbital contact damage, but in this situation I feel like Taurus is just not the right item for us. Overall, any item that gives you a speed down and doesn't give you any immediate benefits, I don't think it's a very good item. So items like Lucky Rock are obviously good, items like the Lard are debatable, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, depends on your position, but items like Taurus, I feel, unless you have a very specific subset of items, it's just not that solid. So we had a bump here, and I had a few choices to make. Will I use the bump, maybe save it, or try to do some tricky things with it? And I decided not to use it to find my second secret room or my secret rooms, because the floor was very elongated, so very tall, and there were a lot of possibilities for second secret rooms, and I just didn't know where I could find it. There were just too many chances for me to miss. Also, the secret room, there were only 2 possibilities, but again, having 2 possibilities and only 1 bomb means I have a 50% chance of finding it. So what I decided to do is just to make maybe a crazy plan, decide to blow up the skulls in the sacrifice room, hoping that they would give me maybe a black card or maybe a tarot card, which would maybe somehow help me on the next floor. But what happens is, I press the button and the golden poop spawned. That gave me 7 cents, which means that if you have more than 5 cents, you have a chance to get the arcade on the next floor, and this is exactly what happened, and the arcade was actually right next to our room. I went in, I bullied it once, and I got the IV bag, which is just a crazy amount of strobe of luck. And you can imagine someone who didn't do that and didn't use their bomb, which is, I think, a totally correct play as well, because having 1 bomb, you really can't go for those chances, is going to miss out on this great opportunity to find the IV bag so early, because having the IV bag so early means you can start using it immediately to amass money and to start really getting damage every floor. So if you don't know, whenever you take damage as Samson, your damage gets increased, and whenever you use your IV bag, you get damage, you get some coins, but in return, because we're Samson, our damage also gets increased, which means that our DPS is kind of directly tied to how many times we played the IV bag at the start. And IV bag is one of those items that works for Samson just as well as something like the D6 works for Isaac, or like the Maggie's the Yam Heart works for Maggie. It's really a lot of, whenever you can get this combo, you know that you have a strong run going on. So I wasn't too upset about missing the devil deal, because the little haunts hit me. And another great fact is that we got the magic mush, which increases our damage potential, because it does give us an increased damage multiplier, of course some stats up. It makes us a bit bigger, which I dislike because I think it makes it harder to dodge, but overall this is starting to shape up like a really good run. Another one of my favorites, or maybe not my favorites, but another fun item we got was the aura, the White Lotus effect, which gives us a random aura whenever we get hit, and which means, again, with the IV bag we can kind of force the aura we want, and generally we would want the damage aura, because that means that we can one-shot most enemies. But the speed up aura is also good enough, because, well, not the speed up, but the tears up aura is also good enough, because we have enough base damage. At some point I think the damage ups become less consequential. So let's say like we have 100 damage and we pick up an item that gives us +1 damage. That's only 1% damage increase, and it's probably not going to be too noticeable. But if we get a tears up, it means that our latent DPS increases, and there's really no cap to well, I guess if you had 100 tears up and then you got only a 1 tears up, then it wouldn't be a very beneficial increase. But I'm saying that whenever you have only damage and you don't have any tears up or any shot speed, or how fast you shoot, then at that point those effects become more useful. And I think overall Tears Up is actually a more effective stat than the Damage Up. The only thing that kind of holds back the Tears Up stat is the fact that you kind of have to compensate for the knockback, I think. Like the Soy Milk, for example, is maybe that's not the most great example of a balanced item. But it would be so much better if there's actually no knockback. So if you have Soy Milk and you have knockback, you can notice just how hard it is to actually sustain damage on the enemy. But if you have something like Piercing Shots, which reduces your knockback to 0, you can actually really start getting the effect of it. And I think the same holds true in this situation. But the fact that our tiers are so much bigger because we have a lot of damage and because of our item that gives us increased damage every time we get hit, and if our tier stat is actually high enough, I think it's much easier for us to hit the enemies, and it, like I said, I think it also gives us more damage potential as a result of that. Thankfully, just overall, like I said, this run was going well. We even got the Humbling Bottom item, which doubles every consumable we get, so that means whenever we get a heart, we get a double heart. And for that reason, we can actually play our IV Bag even more. So at this point, the IV Bag is not only an item that gives you coins and that gives you damage in trade of damage, you can also do a lot of nifty tricks with it. And if you have some red health, what you can do is whenever you enter a curse room, you can use the IV Bag to damage yourself and use the invisibility frames from damaging yourself to enter the curse room without losing any spirit hearts. You can do the same for the chests, for the spike chest, and you can do the same for whenever maybe an enemy wants to hit you or tries to hit you, and you can use that to dodge the enemy or avoid the enemy attack in that situation. And that's very useful because you can really do a lot of things with it. It also synergizes very well with the Polaroid, but sadly this run does go to Shoal or the Dark Room, which means that there is no Polaroid available, so it's kind of useless, but at the same time, whenever you have the ability to kind of gain an extra effect of damaging yourself, that's usually a good thing. Whenever you can actually trigger it yourself and you don't have to trade away any of your damage penalty for it. We're here at the mom fight and it's actually about 20 seconds in. I'm not too worried because I feel like our run is strong enough to be able to deal with mom in this situation. What helps is that we have an orbital, and whenever you have an orbital, I think the mom fight goes by just so super fast. I entered the angel room, tried to see what's going on, and an angel just spawns, which is just unprecedented. I don't know what happened there. I really tried to kill him in time and it just started running into him, which was in retrospect not the smartest idea, but I was panicking. I was in time for boss rush. I finished the mom fight 10 seconds to the 20 minutes, and that would usually be okay to get into boss rush. But I entered the angel room thinking, okay, maybe I'll go in, see which item it is, and I'll reroll it if it's super bad, and maybe I can get a really strong one, and then I'll just do boss rush normally. But what happened is sometimes this happens. There's a glitch whenever you enter a room. I don't know if it's a glitch, maybe it's intentional because it's been in the game for so long. You enter a room and a random rock explodes, and this is exactly what happened, but there's only one rock in the angel room, and what happens, the angel spawns, and I kind of forgot that. If this was a devil deal, I would certainly not enter it, because there's always a chance of it containing a Krampus, and even if you did fight Krampus, there's always that room combination that has the hands coming down, and because you have to wait for them, it's usually not worth I'm just trying to say that if I did go in a room with enemies, I wouldn't be able to make it to boss rush, just to put it short. And if it was a devil deal, I certainly wouldn't go in, because there's a possibility of him entering one of those rooms that has enemies, and that would mean that I missed boss rush. But in this situation, I just entered an angel room, and it just spawned the angel for me, which is just one of the weirdest things. You never expect it, but I guess it's good to make a mental note that even if you're late, or maybe if you don't have a lot of time, you shouldn't enter angel rooms either, just because there's a possibility of that happening. And that is something, I guess, that if you learn anything from today's daily, learn this as well. Not only are the devil deals not safe to enter whenever you're late on time, but entering angel rooms is also not too beneficial. Because we did miss that original boss or devil deal, it means that there's actually a lot more angel rooms. So what happens if you don't take the deal with the devil? The angel room starts spawning, and what's the great thing about the angel rooms is obviously you can get a lot of defensive items, and if your run is offensively strong, you can actually really benefit from those items. What sucks is that most of the items are actually just useless. and you really can't do much with them. So the Angel Room item pool is actually quite poor. It's not too good, but there are some nice good items in there. But the main benefit of having it, at least on daily runs, is that you can bomb the statues, or if they don't bomb themselves, of course, and you can kill the angel and get like 300 points apiece, and that actually adds up very fast, especially on this daily, because I found a lot of Joker cards and I found a lot of ways to actually visit those angel rooms via the red chests, and just overall a lot of devil deals, or angel room spawn, which gave me quite a beneficial. I think I fought 5 or 6 of them, which is in total like 1500 points, extra points, and I feel like if I didn't miss boss rush, this would actually be a very good daily. I think because I also missed boss rush, I got a bit tilted, which means that I just started making silly mistakes and just got hit a bit too much. Then I did get hit a lot usually, but you know, whenever you make a mistake, it usually sets you off and you just start making more mistakes. The Hush fight wasn't too pleasant for us because while we do have quite a significant amount of damage, what we don't have is a way to deal with multiple enemies at once. So whenever he would send out his flies or any of the blue guys or the blue polyps, it would be very hard to deal with multiple of them, just because our damage is not, we can't deal with them fast enough, and that is just so super unfortunate because we have to rely on just raw damage to get through it. Another bad thing that happened is I had the soul item, which is usually good and repents the tears coming next to you, and you can kind of avoid them much more easily. But what happens when you're fighting Hush and you're close to him, at least with my strategy, the tears actually do get propelled away from you, but because they're continuum shots, they actually come back to the other side, and because they went in at an angle, or they got propelled away from an angle, they also come in from an angle, which makes them very unpredictable, and they were a result of us getting hit a lot of times. And also the fact, like I said, that we were unable to deal with those enemies that Hush spawned made it even so much harder to kill them as well. Here we have the shoal. We were in, I think at this point, you know, whenever I'm playing, I look at the score and I see just how far we are into the game and if the run is going well. And I was very surprised that this was actually my standard score for a Satan fight, which is not telling because my scores aren't usually top of the leaderboards, because I do tend to get hit a lot. But I was surprised because I even managed to miss boss rush, and I still think this was a rather decent score to put up. There were quite a few variables here, I think, that went into me being better than I thought I was going to be, and I think the main reason for that is we offset the fact that we missed boss rush by visiting so many angel rooms, and I think getting hit on the second floor was actually a benefit for us, because if it didn't, of course, then it means we would get a devil deal, and that would probably have a good item in it, or maybe not, I'm not sure, I'm just hypothesizing, because there's a more chance that it does have an item that we would pick up, which means that we won't get the angel rooms, and for that reason our score would be actually lower than what it is now. So I'm kind of thankful for that. Whenever you make a mistake, it can actually turn into a positive, like in this situation. I think that was a real benefit for us. We were stuck in a very weird situation here as well, because we only had 2 red health. I really felt like we were stronger than we actually were for some reason, and when I entered this floor I just noticed how weak we are, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna explore the room a bit, the floor, and then I'm gonna just go fight Mega Satan, that's no problem. But what happened is I just got stomped early on and I just got hit a bunch of times, which is super telling of that, you know, when you think back about it, this actually wasn't a very spectacular run. Sure, you know, we had the Ivy bag, which is obviously great, and we had the aura, but besides that, we really didn't have many damage ups, and you know, it's enough to get by, but it's not enough to be super powerful and just be able to stomp everything in your path. But thankfully we did have some fun synergies, which I would like to show up here. So we had the Evil Eye, and I actually rerolled to the Blue Aura, because I think at this stage the blue aura is actually more effective for us. It gives us higher DPS, and it also synergizes as well with the Evil Eye, which is an item that shoots out the little eyes that are shooting, and they actually have a higher fire rate, or lower tier delay if you're maybe technical about it, than you. So having higher rate also means that they're gonna have a higher rate, and because what happens is whenever my tears hit, they leave a little puddle on the ground that actually deals immense amounts of damages to anyone who actually gets damaged by those puddles. And because our luck stat is somewhat high, and because we shoot a lot, there's just a lot of this ice spawning, so whenever we can get a clear shot on the Mega Satan and spawn just 3 or 4 of those eyes, they actually deal immense amounts of damages. The only thing is we just can't get hit, because if we do get hit, we're gonna be losing our blue aura, which means we're gonna shoot slower, which means that then our DPS won't be as high, and then in return, of course, our chances of getting hit will be higher. So there's a lot of probabilities going there, but I hope I did make sense when I said that. Thankfully, everything went well up until this point. I wasn't really worried about this guy, but what happened is I really can't tell which way he would do his attacks. Maybe there's a tell how he shoots his beams, and I usually try to stay in a position that none of his beams would hit me from the second angel, from the being angel. But somehow it's very hard to do that, obviously, because you have a lot of area to cover, and it's much easier if the room is bigger. And I'm not saying that this room is small, but the fact that you have Mega Satan there kind of makes it a bit freaky to deal with. But he managed to get me with one of those sideways beams, which I didn't really expect. But thankfully, because we were at the end of the Mega Satan fight, that was the last phase he spawns before he dies, we were able to deal with it quite effectively. And we still have a second stage to deal with, but that's not really a problem, because the second stage I find is usually a bit easier, especially because we have the soul item, which means none of his tears can actually hit us, and we just have to stay on top of him, just fire a lot of shots. Eventually the evil eye shots will come out and they will deal all the damage for us. And in this situation it turned out rather well. You can see that he's super damaged, and we managed to beat it without too much of a hassle. So he only hit us once, which is so surprising, because I was harping on how weak this run was, and I only managed to get hit once to Mega Satan, which I think is a hard boss, especially when he starts spawning his enemies. You can see that our rank is actually very decent. I was really surprised that it was this high, with the fact that we missed boss rush. Our damage multi is of course through the roof, and if we didn't have that, our run would be so much better, but what can you do? 59 I think is a good enough score to satisfy most people. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.